Welcome back, Sebastian here. Time for my power rankings for the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. Now, because that was such an exciting Grand Prix, I'll have so much to talk about in these power rankings. In all honesty, it's pretty much just going to be a power ranking based on qualifying and a couple small things that happened in the race. So, honestly, it should not take too long. So, starting right away with number 20 is Esteban Ocon. Now, for Ocon, out-qualified by his teammate Pierre Gasly. While on the grid itself, their starting positions were right next to each other, which led to something interesting happening later on. The actual qualifying margin was actually quite large, about half a second between the two of them. And for Ocon, he of course tried that ridiculous move, overtaking Gasly at Portier of all corners on the opening lap. I actually had not seen that when I did my recording for the review earlier this morning, but yeah, pretty ridiculous move, and he's been given a 5-place grid penalty, which is pretty severe for the next race in Canada. Now, number 19, I'm going to go with Sergio Perez. So for Perez, knocked out in Q1 at Monaco for the second straight year. I know that the Red Bull this weekend was definitely not the powerhouse in qualifying that it's been this season, but that being said, still getting knocked out in Q1 is inexcusable. And for Perez, it's unfortunately starting to look like a repeat of Europe 2023 all over again. And I think this time, given that he does not have a contract at the end of this year, this time it could be much more costly if this run of form continues for the next, month or so. Number 18, I'm going to go with, the other thing to mention for Perez is he got caught up in that lap 1 crash. Don't think he had a ton of blame in it. A lot of the blame, I think, goes to this driver here I've gotten in number 18, and that is Kevin Magnussen. That just happened to be a coincidence, not planned at all. For Magnussen, out-qualified by his teammate Nico Hülkenberg, and then of course got disqualified from qualifying, and then in the race lasted about 500 meters. For Magnussen, I think a bit of blame attributed to him for the crash. Not 100%, which is why I don't think the stewards decided not to give him a penalty after the race. I think a little bit on Perez, a little bit on Magnussen as well. Neither of the two drivers were totally to blame for the crash, unlike Ocon with this incident with Gasly. That being said, not a great weekend for Magnussen. Number 17, I'm going to go with Logan Sargent. For Sargent, out-qualified by his teammate, again, Alex Albon, by a decent margin as well. In the race, I think really struggled with tire wear, forced to pit, but made that really nice move on Zhou towards the end of the race. Speaking of Zhou, I've gotten him in number 16. And for Zhou, qualifying was again a real struggle. Out-qualified by half a second, I think, and the fact that the Saubers basically qualified on the last row of their grid kind of hid the fact that Zhou was out-qualified by such a large margin, given that Bottas only qualified 19th. Regardless, Sauber had a ridiculously terrible weekend, and for Zhou, qualifying was pretty poor. The race itself, not great either, and I believe was the last classified finisher as well. Number 15, I'm going to go with Daniel Ricciardo. For Ricciardo, out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. For Ricciardo, I think based on what his teammate was doing, he arguably should have gotten into Q3 and arguably should have gotten a point or two as well. Not the case. Struggled in qualifying, knocked out in Q2. In the race, lost positions to both Aston Martins on the two individual restarts, which definitely dropped him down a little bit. And then for Ricciardo, I think, of course, got ahead of Stroll with Stroll's issues. But yeah, a pretty mediocre weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. Number 14, I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg. Only reason he's this high up is because he out-qualified his teammate. Other than that, the race ended after 500 meters. Not a whole lot more to add. It was kind of an innocent bystander in the collision that took him out of the race. Number 13, I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso. Bit controversial maybe to have him below his teammate, but he was out-qualified by his teammate for the third weekend in a row, and in the race did finish ahead of his teammate Stroll, but I think without Stroll getting that puncture, which I felt was quite unlucky, almost certainly would have finished behind him in the race. So just one of those things where, of course, even though Alonso was the guy who finished ahead, I do feel like on the balance between qualifying and the race, especially since Monaco is a race where qualifying matters so much more than it does at any other track, except for maybe Singapore. But that being said, not a great weekend for Alonso, I felt. Of course, also got knocked out in Q1. Number 12, I've got his teammate Lance Stroll. For Stroll, qualifying I think went alright, not terribly. Out-qualified his teammate for the first time in Monaco in 7 attempts. I guess there's a first for everything these days. And for Stroll, the race, not great. I guess overtook, got a position off of Ricciardo on the start. I got that puncture, which was unlucky, but then made some nice moves on Zhou and Sargent in the closing stages of the race. Give us some entertainment after watching that snooze fest for 78 laps. Other than that, not a great weekend for the two Astons. Number 11, I've gone with Valtteri Bottas. For Bottas, again, out-qualified his teammate Zhou by a nice margin, half a second. In the race, pitted, and then made a couple nice overtakes. Don't think we actually saw the overtakes on track, though. I guess we might have seen a replay of one of them. And then, finished a couple positions ahead of his teammate. Again, really hard to really do anything with the way that the race played out. Felt that Bottas wasn't great, wasn't terrible, was just kind of there. Number 10, maybe a bit controversial, but I'm going to go with Max Verstappen in number 10. For Verstappen, out-qualified and outraced his teammate, which I guess is kind of the bare minimum when you're a teammate, Sergio Perez. And for Verstappen, I really felt, could have had the pace to be on the podium. Made that mistake final run of Q3, didn't set a lap time. Of course, everyone else improved a bit. Other than that, he had really been through Q1, Q2, and the first lap of Q3. I'd been in those top 2-3 positions. So I think, should have ended up there. Unfortunately, small mistake, and then in the race, we never know what would have happened if we didn't have that opening red flag. Might have been able to capitalize with some kind of interesting strategy starting on the hards, but nonetheless, this is Monaco, and given the way things have played out, it basically just became a qualifying race. Number 9, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. For Hamilton, out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate, George Russell. Not a whole lot to say for Hamilton. I know he wasn't particularly happy not being told to push on his outlap and trying to undercut Verstappen. But that being said, it was an okay race, not terrible, not great, not a whole lot more I can add. Number 8, maybe a bit low for this driver, but I'm going to go with Lando Norris. For Norris, out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate, Oscar Piastri. We know that race pace and tire wear is really where Norris shines compared to Piastri, and because it's Monaco, those things probably don't matter the least. So for Norris, looked a bit off in qualifying pace compared to his teammate Piastri all through the weekend, and we know in Monaco that means everything. And then after that, couldn't really do much more with the tire advantage that he seemed to build. Once we get back to more traditional circuits, Canada, Spain, Austria coming up, I think Norris will be able to shine again and, do a really good job in the races. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot more to add. Number 7, I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly. For Gasly, gets his first points of the season, Alpine qualifying in Q3 as well, which is a big achievement given how poor that car is. For Gasly, I think also even more impressive surviving the lap 1 contact with Ocon, carrying that. We know that he was carrying some damage. So yeah, a good result for him at the end of the day. Number 6, I'm going to go with Alex Albon again, another driver picking him his first points of the year. 2 points in the Williams, really good result. I think this is really the best that Williams have looked all year. Albon picking up 2 points, which I guess puts him ahead of Alpine in the Constructors' Championship now, because that 9th place is the best result compared to Alpine's 2 10th place finishes. Number 5, I'm going to go with Yuki Tsunoda again. Doing a really good job last 3 or 4 races, consistently been near the top of my power rankings. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate, qualified P8, which I think is realistically the best he could do. I know in Q1 and Q2, Q2, he was, qualifying a bit, placing a bit higher than that. But the reality is, the top teams will usually, incrementally increase their speed. as the qualifying session goes along. And for those more midfield teams who usually have to go on it right from the very beginning of Q1, those gaps kind of start to build, especially once you get to Q3. So not really surprised he ended up there, but really best of the rest. Yeah, a great weekend for Tsunoda. Number 4, I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz. For Sainz, out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate. But that being said, his teammate is Charles Leclerc, who has one of the best qualifying records on the grid at Monaco. So it's really hard to fault Sainz for that. And, I think was a bit lucky with how things played out with basically the puncture he got on lap 1. I'm honestly not sure. I would have to check the regulations, but I thought it was you have to get one sector done before the red flag comes out for that lap to basically count. And given that, Ocon and Gasly were racing at Portier, which is in Sector 2, perhaps that's not the case. Perhaps maybe it's 2 sectors they have to complete. Not exactly sure on the ruling of that, but regardless, Sainz, I think a bit lucky with how things went. Nonetheless, still got himself a podium. Number 3, I'm going to go with George Russell. For Russell, I think really did the best he could this weekend. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate. Lewis Hamilton beat Max Verstappen as well. I think the Mercedes, while they looked pretty good this weekend, it was pretty clear to me that they were kind of off the pace of the Mercedes and the McLarens and the Ferraris. So kind of Russell being in that 5th position, kind of being in the best of that kind of next group. Yeah, and really best, I think Russell did the best he could this weekend. Number 2, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. Excellent second career race in Monaco. Qualified P2. Maybe could have gotten pole position. I think it would have been a tall ask, but I think really got the most out of the package, and I think this was arguably one of his strongest weekends in Formula One, given how much better in general he looked compared to Norris across the practice sessions and across qualifying. Now, of course, that means number 1 is none other than your race winner, Charles Leclerc. Really hard to pick otherwise, given how little happened in the race. For Leclerc, was on it right from the start of practice. Into qualifying, was very, very fast, and just put together a great lap in Q3 to get pole position, and then just controlled the race very, very well. Not a whole lot more to add. So there you go. There's my power rankings for the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. Despite the fact that nothing happened in the race, this video is still 12 minutes long. A bit surprised by that, but nonetheless, here we are. So anyway, there you go. There's my power ranking for the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. Get a bit of a break now in terms of motorsport. First weekend off next weekend since February for me, given I've been doing Formula 1 and Formula E. But I think I have about 2 to 3 videos planned for that kind of break until Canada, which should be a good race. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.